Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and another new movie review. The Gorge is the latest original film to be released by Apple Studios exclusively for Apple TV. Starring Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, this film is a surprisingly well-done film for what it is. The plot is fairly simple. In the 1940s, the Soviet Union, the United States, and its allies got together to work on creating biological weapons. The location of the research facility is unknown and confidential. However, we do know that it is at the bottom of a gorge surrounded by mountains and desolate wilderness. Unfortunately for the facility, there was seismic activity, and the biological agents they were working on were released into the air, causing human DNA to mutate while bonding with surrounding DNA from other sources such as insects and trees. After that, the facility was shut down and taken over by a private corporation, which each year has one volunteer from the Russian side and one volunteer from the Allied side sign up for a year of service. That service? To live alone on one side of the gorge and monitor for activity. Under no circumstances can anything ever escape from the gorge or carry with it the still lingering biological poison that could spell disaster for the entire world population. Enter Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. Miles is an ex-Marine Special Forces sniper, and Anya is a Russian sniper. They take over from their predecessors and have to spend their time not only monitoring for mutations, but also maintaining the equipment, such as motion sensors, tracking guns, explosive ordnances attached to the walls of the gorge, and the cloaking devices that keep the gorge from being seen by anyone outside of the need to know, all while never having anything but a monthly radio check-in with the outside world. The volunteers are also not supposed to interact with each other, but of course Miles Teller cannot help but start to get interested in Anya Taylor-Joy while spying her through his binoculars. During their first back and forth, we get our first look at the Hollow Men, the name given to the actual creatures in the gorge as they try to scale up the walls and attack the two sentry posts. The Hollow Men and the rest of the film take some inspiration from the T.S. Eliot post-World War I poem of the same name, The Hollow Men, which ends with one of the most famous quatrains in all of poetry. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. So our two snipers strike up a distant friendship, they send messages back and forth via cue cards, even enjoy a game of chess. One day, Miles gets up the nerve to ask for a dinner date, he zip lines across to the Soviet side, and he and Anya spend the night with each other. The next day, as Miles zips back to the Allied side, there's an explosion and he falls into the gorge, and Anya follows in after him. Here is where the film turns from suspense, mystery, and romance to a survival action film as the two fight off the Hollow Men, who look like a group of evil Groots, and the other enlarged and malformed insects that populate the bottom of the gorge. They discover the main base where the research took place in the 1940s, and therefore they also discover the truth about what they're actually doing. They are not protecting the world. They are guarding the still ongoing research. The corporation that hired them is still monitoring the gorge activity and extracting samples so they can create a race of super soldiers or super weapons. And the two also discover the fail-safe protocol, which is if the cloaking devices are disabled, a nuclear weapon is detonated, destroying all evidence of the gorge's existence and its usage. After the two battle it back to the top, the corporation, run by Sigourney Weaver, discovers all the violations Miles and Anya have made, including contact with each other and traveling into the gorge. She then orders Miles to kill Anya and then changes her mind and decides to kill them both to protect the secrets. And as she arrives at the gorge to make sure the job is done properly, Miles and Anya put into place their own plan, which is blow the whole thing up, which they manage to do while escaping to obscurity and freedom. And that's the plot. At just over 2 hours of runtime, I found the film very efficient in its use of time. The first act of the film begins slowly. It builds a mythology, its own backstory, gives the audience a bunch of questions to keep the interest going. Teller and Joy do a great job keeping that first act going with their own chemistry that they have between each other. The film does not try to be anything it is not. It knows it's a love letter to video games such as Resident Evil and to the poetry of T.S. Eliot, and this is how it sort of plays out. There's an evil corporation like Umbrella, and the first part of the narrative is exploring, discovering, diving into the mystery, developing relationships, while the second half is spent fighting hordes of monsters. The CGI was very good, which was a relief because after seeing Captain America 4 and how bad that CGI was, seeing it done well for once felt like a treat. The story is straightforward. It's a universal message about impeding on nature and the consequences of playing God. Both main characters are developed and given individual strengths and vulnerabilities, and they're always complementary, never one taking the lead over the other. The acting is what you would expect from this trio, which is very good. There are some gunfights, some explosions, some hand-to-hand combat with the Hollow Men, so the film knows when to slow down and develop a theme and its characters, and it knows when to put it into a higher gear to pay off all that was built up. In the end, The Gorge is just a cool story, a fun concept, one that borrows heavily from the survival horror genre that has already come before it, and spends a couple of hours weaving through it all. Now, this is not a theatrical release, but an Apple TV exclusive, and this may be where some of the negative bias comes from when reading other reviews of the film. Apple TV and Apple Studios has had a hit and miss over the years since it first began producing original content. But it should not matter where an entertaining movie is conceived or produced. What should matter is if the film achieves what any film should primarily look to achieve, and that is to be entertaining, which The Gorge is. And if you have Apple TV Plus, I suggest giving it a look. And that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, I'm your reluctant gringo from somewhere south of the border. Salud, and a huevo.